Hey, folks, and I hope everyone is enjoying this fine Saturday morning. I managed to sneak in just about a half an hour of work here on my baseball project. I have a lawn to mow today and things to do with my family, but I've always managed to squeeze in a little bit of time to work on my pet projects. This is my Major League Baseball project that I started sharing earlier in the week on LinkedIn. I started this as a self-improvement project to make an environment. I grabbed a highly decimated and optimized low poly mesh, publicly accessible on the web. It was a GLB file, and I stripped all of the materials off of it and all the textures. And the idea is I would rebuild this stadium in high definition procedurally in 3ds Max using splines. And then I would materialize and texture this stadium. One of the interesting things that I was able to solve this morning with a tried and true old school technique was blending dirt and grass transitions. Now, our grass looks pretty cool. It is this little extruded or raised grass area here as it appears in real life, but there is this unnatural, artificial, ultra crisp, perfect razor edge delineation between the grass and the dirt. So how would we solve that? Well, I relied on a very old school technique, but one that is still used and still works very well, which is to create a canopy or a cape decal along the edge that has that transition texture in it. Actually learned about this many years back looking at some developer vlogs by the developers of Assetto Corsa, which is a simulation racing game. So I've moved over to 3ds Max here. And again, the 3ds Max viewport is not pretty. There's a lot of lighting and cool post-processing going on in Unity that you don't see here. But it's going to show us the gears, the machinery behind what we export out into Unity here. And if we look here, we do have this decal along the edge. If I hide it, we see very much what we see in Unity. If I bring it back and select it and isolate it, we can see what it looks like in isolation. Here's what the geometry looks like. It is basically a cape or decal that goes both ways, up onto the grass and down onto the dirt, to really sell the transition. I discovered that if I cut it off here, excuse me, you would get an artificial looking shading under the lighting in Unity that would show this very unnatural hard edge here. And I found by just extending the geometry completely up over the shelf of the grass, really helped the lighting blend between grass and dirt here. If we get in at the microscopic level here, we can see there's some issues. There are seams, and I could easily fix these and paint these out and sort of improve this to absolute perfection where you don't see any of this, but honestly, it's not necessary. At the average height of a 1.8 meter tall male, or 1.6 or 5 meter female, even as you get out to this point, the bitmaps start taking over and they start blurring that edge to where it just doesn't show at all. And I will never be at a point in this demo reel piece where we're going to lay down on the dirt and grass and get this microscopic on it. It works. It sells the effect that it's supposed to do. And that's what it looks like. It's very simple. I reverse the UVs at the top and just push the grass up this way. And it was an experiment to see if that would work or look right. It didn't look right without it. When I came back into Unity and we just enable that piece right here in Unity, we'll see a pretty profound change. And so what we get now is a really nice, nearly perfect blend between the grass and dirt that makes it look a lot more natural. And there is some polish that I can do there with the UVs to maybe make the textile density or the relationship between the scale of the texture here, how much it's tiled, with how much it's textured here. I'm like a little sharper in the decal, but even here you can see that because of the adjustments I've made to the vertex normals, and I'm going to show that in a second, you just don't even see those seams. You get a distance here, which is about a quarter of a meter away, less than a half a foot, and you no longer see seams. You also see shading parity between the two. So like the edge doesn't really stand out a whole lot, maybe from very specific lighting angles. Again, we can solve that. That just requires the vertex normals. adjustment, and I'm using what are called weighted normals. Let me show you guys what those look like. So here's what flat shaded looks like. And when I'm talking about the vertex normals, let me show another image real quick. These are the vertex normals, and you can see where the edges are, and the faces, the edges, and these corners where the vertices are. These little pink things here are the vertex normals. You also have face normals. So you can control how these 3D objects shade along their faces and along the beveled edges by adjusting both the face normals and the vertex normals. Now, I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but I think adjusting face normals is just hiding the fact that it's adjusting the vertex normals. I think everything is pretty much a vertex normal. Face normals are just an easier way to work with it. You can see that there are a half dozen little points here for every vertex at the corner. Using weighted normals over here, you reduce the complexity of those by merging some of them, but also adjusting their angles. Let me show you the difference between default shading. This is what a low poly object would look like with bevels all at the edges. The interpolation between the beveled edges based on those vertices here along the face and the bevels is not ideal. But when you weight those normals and then those vertex normals take into account the length of the face that it's shading, it prioritizes tightening the shading at the bevel. You just get a great amount of detail. Let me show you what it looks like here. This looks okay, but it's really lost a lot of that detail that you really wanted on those crisp edges that you beveled, and here it brings them back, brings them out. Again, you may want a soft model. A lot of stuff on mobile, you do want to soften most of those edges without doing bevels, mainly because you're splitting vertices and increasing overhead, depending on how heavy that mesh is. But this is the difference. Weighted normals, unweighted normals, traditional face normals here. And this is a good example right here. This is an average. This is the default normals for an object. This is when you weight them, and you can see that the shading is superior. I pretty much use weighted normals by playing with the area and the angle. You can prioritize the angle of the face over the angle, the area of the face, over the angle of the bevels or the changes in the faces, even if there aren't bevels. Weighted normals are outstanding when you're dealing with low poly geometry. On this cape right here was definitely low poly geometry. There's not a lot of detail in it at all. And the weighted normals, when I select both the flat grass field and the cape at the same time, and I weight the normals together, it averages the normals. They basically just flow right over this decal, and they shade it like it's exactly one whole object. So if you're not using weighted normals, I would definitely highly recommend looking into it. I may need to give this some loving here to fix this a little bit, but it's not going to be for the normals. It's going to be in the UVs and the texture. But already, I'm pretty happy. If I were to fly a camera around this to capture a 4K video, I'm pretty happy with those transitions. I can actually go and take the geometry too in the decal and in this and sort of apply some kind of offset noise in this x-axis. And I could actually make this whole edge look slightly wobbly, but they do a really good job in these ball fields of making sure these are very accurate straight lines. So I don't want to fiddle with that too much. But anyway, that's the update today. Grass edge transitions. There was a little bit of stuff that I did last night by applying a PBR base metal up here, the details of which no one will ever really see up close. But this black steel that I'm using here in this GLTF shader will cover a lot of this stadium. So all I have to do is just procedurally auto map the UVs and map this to a lot of these faces. And then I have to do a bit of the, I'm going to go back to 3ds Max here. I'm going to show, you can see some of the wireframe, some of the stuff that I've procedurally modeled in here. This is a lot of extra detail that does not need to be in this mesh, and I can run Pro Optimizer on this at some point. We can see the gaps where the old GLB provided geometry is there, and that's just not going to work. That's not acceptable. The idea here with increasing the resolution was first, I'm just capturing a video of this. It's not really intended for real time. And I was hoping that I could use some displacement on this and create a very subtle lumpiness, for lack of a better term, a lumpiness in the field. It has to be extremely subtle, and mainly because I'm going to map GPU-based particles over this, and I want the grass to have these subconscious level undulations in height, maybe. It has to be very subtle, basically, because this grass in these fields is extremely flat and mowed really nice and kept that way on purpose for the sport. Anyway, hope you all enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I hope this update was interesting.